closed session.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. City Council is in closed session this evening on conference with legal counsel on existing litigation. There's no action to report on that item, and the council will be going back into closed session on the second item at the conclusion of the open meeting.
Thank you. Moving on to open session. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Payne? Here. Councilmember Hewer? Here. Councilmember Campion?
Here.
Councilmember Powers? Here. Mayor Cruz?
Here. All rise for silent prayer, followed by the flag salute by Coast Scout Pack 16.
Okay, so I can see you're all rising, so. Audience attention, color guard attention, color guard advance. Color guard, prepare to post the colors. Audience salute. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Color guard, post the colors. Two. Color guard form. Color guard retreat. Audience at ease.
Are you going up or down?
I'm trying to go up.
Just no sit.
I couldn't, thank you, I couldn't find it.
This meeting of the Galt City Council will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel, on the Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T Uverse cable systems. Tonight's meeting will air Thursday, May 5th at 2 p.m. and Friday, May 6th at 9 a.m. It is being closed captioned and will be webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. The City Council meeting videos are also archived on the city's website at www.ci.galt.ca.us. A DVD copy is available for checkout from any library branch.
Very good. Do we have any agenda approvals, additions, or deletions? Seeing none, we'll move on to presentations. The Greater Sacramento Softball Association Technology Grant. Parks and Rec.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'd like to present Tanny Watts, a Recreation Coordinator with the Parks and Rec Department. She'll be giving this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight, I'm here to tell you a little bit about a grant that we applied for. Back in March, it was our technology grant through the GSSA, which is the Greater Sacramento Softball Association. With this grant, we felt it was an opportunity for us to implement safety with technology in our youth and adult softball league. With the $2,500, we plan on purchasing video recorders for each field. This helps protect our players, staff, officials, and coaches on and off the field. It also aids in game protests as well as supporting any kind of game suspensions of players. The video cameras are not intended for instant replay. They are only there for pure documentation. We also plan on buying walkie-talkies to help assist with our communication with our supervisors and our staff. We do have up to 3 fields going on during the weekend, and this way we can have our supervisor at one main field and he can still communicate with everybody. And this also helps us assist our customers to our highest ability. Tonight we have Jeff Duchansky here. He's a commissioner with GSSA. Come on up, Jeff. Thank you.
Good evening. Usually I make the speech, so this was really nice to have Tanny do it for me. My name is Jeff Dubchansky, and I represent the Greater Sacramento Softball Association as the commissioner. Basically, we represent about 10,000 kids that play softball and about 20,000 adults that play softball. We stretch all the way from Galt, you're our furthest south, all the way north to Lincoln, and then we're kind of wide. We go from Dixon all the way up to South Lake Tahoe. So we cover a large area, and we have a lot of people that play ball. Our grant program has been in existence for 17 years since I've been the commissioner, and this is the first time Galt has applied. And you've been successful in the application, and I'm really glad to be here tonight to be able to do that. This is one of the fun things that I get to do as the commissioner, because there's a lot of really cruddy things that I have to do as the commissioner. When you have to buy video cameras to deal with things like suspensions, you can imagine the kind of things that I have to deal with. So on behalf of the Greater Sacramento Softball Association, I'd like to present you with our check for $2,500. And I'll give this to you, but you can't keep it. So I'll give it to you, I'll take it back, and then I'll give you a real one. Thank you very much. And then I have the real one.
Finance director's right over there.
Give you the real one. And thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you for applying for that grant.
Okay, wow, moving on to the economic development update.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. Amy Mendez, Economic Development Manager. Thank you for the opportunity this evening to present. I was here back in February and had the opportunity to give you a quick synopsis of what I've been working on in my first couple of months with the City of Galt and economic development in particular. And so, as promised, I'd like to continue to come back every few months and just provide you with a brief overview on things that I've been working on, what I'm hearing from the development community, the brokers and such, as I'm out there connecting with folks. So for tonight, just a brief overview on what we'll be discussing. The ICSC, I know many of you have heard me talk about the retail trade show that I attended in Monterey. I'll go over a little bit of that and what feedback I received while I was at that show. Also talk a little bit about the just general retail overview of what's happening here in the community and what the brokers are telling me and what I'm hearing with existing retail space. Also speak a little bit about the industrial market, or lack thereof, here in the community of Galt in terms of vacancy, what's happening with the industrial market, and business retention. There's a lot of exciting things happening with our existing businesses, and big focus that I've been really concentrating on, and so I think it's important to continue as we move forward. And then lastly, talking about moving into the future, so the things that I'll be tackling over the next couple of months, and gather any feedback that you might have on things that you'd like to see me concentrating on. So first off is ICSC. Just to give you a little bit of background on what ICSC is, it is a global retail trade association for the shopping center industry. And encompasses internationally about 60,000 members and covers about 90 countries. So it's a huge organization. All of the retailers that are active in the state, in the nation, and in the world are really involved in this organization. It's a great way to network and make contacts with different retailers. Also developers, brokers, property management companies, shopping center owners, kind of runs the gamut of members that are involved with this organization. And so cities have started to really become involved in ICSC because it's a way for us to network and attract retailers to different communities. And as the retail industry grows, obviously it's a big sales tax base for the city, and we want to make sure that we're competitive. And so cities have really gotten involved in the ICSC trade shows. The major trade show that the ICSC puts on is a show in Las Vegas. That is held in May every year. It's a global trade show, and there's about 100,000 people that attend every year. It's a huge show. Exhibitors, there's probably about 1,000 exhibitors. It's an exhausting, tiring show. I've been a couple of times. And for smaller communities, it's a little bit more difficult to market yourself. You go talk to somebody and they kind of wonder where Galt is. They don't even really know where California is half the time when you talk to some of these guys. So it's an interesting diversity of folks. The Northern California show, though, is held in Monterey every year. And so that's a show that I attended just last month. There's also a Western regional show that is more geared towards Southern California and Arizona, and that's in San Diego in September. And so these are kind of three of the major shows that are held through ICSC. They have different events all through the year, all over the world, really. But these three shows are really important, I think, for cities in particular. And so Monterey is the show that I attended in March. And what's neat about the Monterey show is it's a Northern California show focused on the Northern California region. And so most of the folks that are there are familiar with the communities in Northern California, which is nice. I don't have to spend a lot of time explaining where Galt is or any of the communities really that are there representing themselves. And so it's attended by brokers, developers, and retailers from most of the communities in California, but also a lot of the retailers and brokers that are attending are there representing major retailers and major shopping center developers. The second day of the show is dedicated to an exhibit hall, and so these are some pictures of the show. This is the trade show booth that I set up, and Chris Arias from the planning department was generous enough to attend with me. He worked this booth space with me, and there's a lot of people that come through in really a 3-hour period, and so me trying to work it myself, you miss a lot of people. And so Chris was great, and I told him I'm going to give him an honorary economic development badge because he really does represent the city from the economic development standpoint that we need, and so it was very helpful. Thousands of people that come through and pass by the booth. Like I said, a lot of folks knew about Galt. They knew where we were. They had done business here, which was really exciting. Spons provided me some fabulous cookies, which, it's great to have something to give away that's from your community, and it's a great conversation starter. Everybody loves cookies, and to be able to say that there's a cookie company in your downtown is great to sort of start a conversation. And so this booth, we had marketing material. We were able to talk about sites that are available, things that we were marketing within the community, and just, residential growth was a big topic, kind of wanting to know where the new residents were coming into the community, where the development was happening, because a lot of the residential really draws the retail into the community. So the exhibit booth was on the second day of the show. On the first day of the show was really geared towards appointments that I had scheduled. And so the show itself is full of educational sessions as well as networking. And I'm able to sit down and meet face-to-face with a lot of these retailers that are attending, or brokers that represent specific retailers. And so I was able to meet with Ross, the Northern California rep for Ross was there. She also represents Lowe's and Kohl's, which was great to be able to kind of pick her brain on the Galt community. Talked with the largest franchisee for Applebee's, also represents Panera. Home Depot, I spoke with their real estate representative for California, Starbucks, and Panda Express. So those were all, appointments that I was able to sit down and really sell the community. El Pollo Loco, In-N-Out Burger, Fitness Evolution, and Hibbett all had exhibit booth space. And so the day of the show, before the actual show started on day 2, I was able with Chris to go around and really market us to these other retailers that we didn't have appointment schedule with. But Hibbett especially, we think that we have a really good spot for them in the Dollar Tree space, and so that was one that we were really pushing with them. And they've had contact with the broker. They are in discussions with the existing Dollar Tree that is up for sublease right now in the Raleigh Shopping Center. So, you know, all in all, I think it was really good exposure for the community. Galt's never had a booth there, and there were about 8 other communities that were representing cities throughout California. And we were all grouped together, and so it was great to be able to kind of feed off each other as folks came through. And again, a lot of the brokers and developers were familiar with our community, which makes it a little bit easier than when you go to Las Vegas and you blindly walk up to a retailer and they have no idea where you're from, or, you know, because they get it all day long. So it's very intentional and very productive. The sites that I marketed in particular had to do with our major commercial corridors. So Twin Cities obviously is a big commercial corridor for us, and I talked to Ross in particular about the Carillion Corners piece, which is east of Rite Aid on Carillion and Twin Cities. They like the community of Galt. They are interested to some level. The conversation I had really was around, they need another store in Elk Grove. Galt's not in their 5-year plan. They weren't planning on putting a store here, but they don't want to cannibalize themselves in Elk Grove, and their Elk Grove store does very well. And so the discussions were around, what sites do you have available? So in particular with Carillion Corners, big enough space for them, it's too far off the freeway. If they're going to gamble in a community the size of Galt, they really want freeway frontage, and so that wasn't something they would be interested in. So the conversation turned to Simmerhorn, which we'll get to in the next slide. The space behind Rite Aid, I talked to Applebee's about. That was one of the sites that they wanted to discuss. So we talked to them a little bit about the North Twin Cities corridor. Again, too north of town, they want to be central to town, more in sort of the central area of where the market is, but also where the majority of the population can access from all areas. So they, again, came to Simmerhorn is where we started discussing. There is a 4,000 square foot pad in front of the Comfort Inn that I've been heavily marketing, and I keep getting the same feedback, which is it's kind of hidden. A lot of the retailers feel like they are sort of landlocked, and there's not access from the GNC septic piece, and so we've been pushing marketing that piece to get that up and kind of developed. There is interest to sell it, and so we have sort of been talking to different developers about that property to open up access to the Comfort Inn piece, that 4,000 square foot pad. Panda Express was specific to that site. We talked about it. They want to be on Twin Cities. They don't want to be buried in the shopping center, and so then the discussions turned to Simmerhorn. So we saw a theme kind of as I went through these meetings. Again, the sublease of the Dollar Tree space, one of the problems we run into with that space is it's a really unique size. You know, Blockbuster sat vacant for a really long time, and that's because of the square footage. It's a unique square footage, not many retailers that will fill that footprint, so they finally subdivided the space, and they do have tenants now that are moving into the space, but it's taken a long time, which is sort of the same problem we're running into with Dollar Tree. Again, GNC septic we talked about, trying to find a user for that site, difficult configuration, more of a triangular shape. It's got a lot of frontage from Caltrans that's going to be required, and so we're looking at you know, marketing that space and trying to get somebody interested, but it's the price point that we're struggling with right now. So hopefully once a user is up and running just north in between McDonald's and that space, we'll see a little bit more activity there. So in terms of commercial, the Simmerhorn site was one that we really discussed a lot in Monterey, and that really was because it's got premier freeway frontage. That's a huge consideration for a lot of these retailers. They like the site because it's so close to the freeway. It's got great access. The other is that it's really central to the community, and it's easily accessed from all areas of town, and so that went along with you know, the attractiveness of it. What we run into with the Simmerhorn site really is we need an anchor in order to move this project forward, and that's the most difficult part is getting an anchor to commit. Once an anchor comes in and commits, a big box anchor, you're able to draw in a lot more of the soft goods users, the Marshalls or the Ross or the Famous Footwear, Dress Barn. Those types of users will follow an anchor, but it's getting somebody like Kohl's kind of to cross that finish line to really take the chance on the community. And, you know, the feedback that I heard a lot was, Galt's really at that in-between population. We just don't know if we're ready for that yet. The market right now, they're very considerate about where these anchors, where they'll go. It's not 2004 where people will just build wherever there's a space. They're very thoughtful about the process they go through before they locate. And so we speak about residential development, where it's happening, where it's occurring, and it really goes back to being able to get that anchor to cross the finish line. I mean, it's a struggle that I think that we're going to have until we get to a little bit larger of a population. But the exciting part was there was a lot of interest, and I think that that says a lot about the community. We've got great freeway visibility and great access. And so moving forward, this is really going to be a push. The developer for the Simmerhorn site is a residential developer. That's really where his background is, and so he's interested in partnering with a commercial developer. And we've been in discussions with Kitchell. Sounds like they might be interested in the site, as well as the Lewis Group out of Southern California and Regency have all shown interest. Again, it goes back to the depth of the anchors that are interested. So that's really what's going to be sort of the demanding factor on the site here moving forward. As it relates to Galt Village, just on a general retail update, Galt Village is almost full. They're really, the only space that's available is the pad site, that 4,000 square foot pad in front of Comfort Inn. And there is the one remnant space. So Blockbuster is been broken up, it's been subdivided, and AT&T Wireless is under construction doing their tenant improvement. Sally Beauty Supply is taking another portion of that space, and that leaves one remnant space which has been spoken for. They're in lease negotiations right now. It's a national tenant. I think it'll be a good tenant for the city, and so they'll hopefully be able to announce that within the next couple of months. The other location is the former tanning supply or tanning booth, Boozer, who was next to Dollar Tree. And that location is also been spoken for by a national tenant. It's just a very smooth, they move really slow. It's come to conclusion. So hopefully within the next couple of months we'll see that space built. Outside of that, there's nothing available in the Galt Village Center. The Carillion Corner space, which is up on where Tractor Supply is on Carillion and Twin Cities, we have an application in for Taco Bell, and that's going on the last remaining pad site that fronts onto Twin Cities, and Squeeze In is going to be relocating, and so we have plans in for their build out there, which leaves one remnant space of about 900 square feet. Tony and I were joking this morning that it'd be perfect for Jamba Juice, so we'll see what we can do there. But outside of that, there's really nothing available in that shopping center either. In downtown, I think I've shared with a few people that we have a vacancy or a building in escrow. The property on 4th and C Street is in escrow, which is, everybody calls it the tech building. It's in escrow. I spoke to the broker this morning. They're closing next week, and so hopefully we'll see some movement with that property within the next couple of months. It says 2 properties in escrow. It's actually only 1. We do have a business license application in there for a restaurant that is looking at the old Gary's Deli location. That building is also for sale. It's not in escrow, but they do have a new user for that space, so we should see a restaurant announced there within the next couple of months. Also, many of you have probably seen the relocation of C Street Deli. They're moving on to 4th Street, which I think will provide folks with at least a little bit more area to sit when you go in there for lunch. And there is a new Mexican restaurant going in next to the post office. Those plans have been finalized, and they should be under construction right now, doing the TI in there. And then the Best Western, we have plans in for an expansion. So there's a lot happening on the retail front. Kind of speaks to the market right now. There's just a lot happening on the retail side of things. And then we get into industrial, which is just as hot, especially in Galt, considering we have no space for lease anywhere in this community. I pulled it again today just to check the market, and still on CoStar and LoopNet, which are the 2 main sites that I use for checking space that's for lease or for sale, there's really nothing available. There's 1 building for sale, but it's actually fully leased, so it's just an investment property. And in terms of industrial land, we have about 4 acres that is for sale right now. Really narrow configuration. It's going to be difficult to work with. There are some properties in the industrial park that are still available for development, but they're not for sale actively, and so I'm working on contacting those users now. owners to see if there would be interest in trying to configure at least a large enough site for a larger user, because we are running into some difficulty. And this really ties into the industrial annexation. It's going to be important moving forward. I've had probably 3 RFIs come through from the state for suppliers of Tesla. They just announced a huge lease in Livermore of 1 million square feet. They have a new paint manufacturer that went into West Sacramento, and so there's a lot happening on the Tesla side with their new Model 3 that they're getting ready to unleash. So I think we'll see a lot happening on that end. As it relates to business retention, most of my focus has been really trying to gather the resources needed for some of our existing businesses. And so I have met with SBA, the SBDC, I've met with USDA, I've met with every acronym you can imagine, and gathered really a huge incentive list and resources that are available out there for our existing businesses. And just recently on retention visits I've been on and drop-ins that I've made, you know, building materials distributors, one of the largest employers in town, they're getting ready to submit for a new warehouse on their existing property, about 60,000 square feet. They're out of room, and they've been kicked out of space that they had off-site because L&L Wood Products, which is brand new, they just opened last year, they needed additional space. So they've leased up the last 30,000 square feet that we have in this town. So CMD is now constructing a new warehouse building, which, you know, it's great to see the activity happening on that end. So I've put, you know, BMD, I've met with them, I've talked to them about some of the incentives that are out there, especially California Competes tax credit program. It's going to be huge for some of these businesses when they're expanding to take advantage of the tax credits. And so that's my line of communication, really. I mean, 70% of our job creation is going to happen at our local business level, and so making sure that they have the resources available moving forward is going to be key. The others are Spawn. Met with them a couple weeks ago when I stole some cookies from them, and they have added a new shift. So they've hired a full new shift of people to run a swing shift, which is great news because, I mean, that's an ideal user to have in your community, somebody with a name like Spawn who distributes all over the nation, and they continue to grow. They have a new contract with TJ Maxx, and so they've brought on a whole new shift that they're running. Talking to them about lighting retrofits and adding new machinery and putting solar on their building. So they're working with SMUD right now, and hopefully we can get them some incentives and rebates back on some of the improvements that they're doing. The other one is Cal Waste. Had extensive visits with Cal Waste. They have added a new shift. They've hired about 30 new employees. They're running a swing shift now. And so putting them in touch with SMUD as well on some of the incentives that SMUD has to offer. Also reminding them next time they take advantage of the California Competes tax credit program, because nobody seems to be really going through that process. And it's a huge process for some of these businesses, huge incentive for them to take advantage of. So again, you know, on the business retention side, I think it's important because without any industrial space, really what we have to do is grow our existing businesses. And somebody like BMD, they have the land. It's just a matter of taking advantage of it and building. Same with L&L. So my next call is to L&L to try and get a visit with them to find out if there's a way we can help them to take advantage of the existing space that they have land-wise to build if they need warehousing space on their existing property to free up some of the property that we need for new businesses coming into town. Moving forward, you know, my focus really will stick with retail recruitment, and that's going to be big, I think, for the city as we move forward. The Simmerhorn site is going to be really a focus, as well as downtown. You know, there's a lot happening in the downtown, and I think that over the next couple of months, there's going to be some discussions with the existing merchants and property owners to determine how we take the next step moving forward on the business attraction side. Business retention obviously is going to continue, calling on some of the larger employers and larger sales tax generators. The website is a priority, getting a refresher kind of on the economic development page to provide some of the properties that are available, but also all of the incentives that are out there available from the state, regional level, and also the local level. And then I am collecting all kinds of business cards and contact information to put together a newsletter to really push out some of the good news briefs that are happening in the community, new residential developments that are occurring, new businesses that are opening, just to make sure that Galt remains sort of on, it's kind of on the forefront of everybody's mind moving forward. And then lastly is Greater Sacramento. I don't think it's on the slide that you guys have, but the Greater Sacramento Area Economic Council is a economic development organization for the region and made up of public and private organizations, a lot of city governments that are within the 6-county region of Sacramento are involved. And so working with them moving forward to make sure that we're kind of included as part of the Sacramento area. I feel like every time I talk to somebody, they ask, what county is Galt in? And, you know, we want to make sure that that's really evident to folks, and to make sure that the greater Sacramento is marketing for us and is making sure that we're included in some of these RFIs. And so far, I think it's been a good relationship. They've been quick to include us on all of their activities, and, you know, networking-wise and making sure that everybody knows that Galt is here. We are, you know, business-friendly. We want to make sure that we're also included as part of these businesses. Are, you know, continuing to expand is really important. So, and that would be it. If there's any questions, sorry that was a little long-winded, but.
I have a question. Did you have a chance to check in with the new Mr. Pickles and the station there? Are they doing business?
I actually spoke with DD Construction, who did the development there, and they said that Mr. Pickles does fabulous business. They also said that Chevron does really good business as well. It's been very active, especially Consolidated Container next door, or Consolidated Fabricators. They have a lot of their employees that are over there grabbing lunch because they only have a half an hour. So I think they're probably sick of Mr. Pickles, but that's where they're at most of the time. So for a lunchtime crowd, I think they do really good business. And it's quick on and off the freeway, especially when you're heading northbound. And so both, I've heard, the Chevron and Mr. Pickles have done really well. They're also marketing the site to the east that they have, which is a little bit less than an acre. I know they've been in talks with the fast food user. And so we'll see where that goes. We did have contact with Dutch Bros a couple weeks ago. They came in, they're looking for a site in Galt, and so we provided them with several different locations for consideration. So hopefully we can get them to locate here as well.
The other thing I was wondering, we have spicy berries around here. Certain days you can tell better than others. Is there any marketing of dairy industry, like cheese or ice cream, anything that we might have in the dairy industry?
Bringing in new companies, you mean? Oh, definitely. I think that the food industry, especially now, as we move forward, I was at CalEd last week, the California Economic Development Association. There was an entire session dedicated to ag development, and so I do think there's an opportunity there we can take advantage of. It's just having the available space to really utilize that. Some of those food users, especially cheese, have a lot of discharge, so that would require Public Works to get on board with marketing that effort. But no, I definitely think so.
Good. Thank you.
Awesome report. Any further questions from council?
No, very good.
Thank you very much, Amy.
Thank you.
Nice to have a moving cheaper in the group.
Moving on to public comment.
Under Government Code Section 54954.3, members of the public may address the council on non-agenda items. Speakers may address council on any agenda item during consideration of the item. Speakers shall restrict their comments to issues that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council and limit comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Please fill out a speaker sheet located on the table inside the entrances to the council chambers and forward the completed speaker sheet to the clerk.
Very good. Anyone else?
My name is Reuben Epstein, and I have lived in Galt for about 39 years now. Just wanted to bring to your attention graffiti on public property that's been there for about 48 days. It was put down on the 16th of March, the day before St. Patrick's Day. The article in the Lodi paper, I'll pass this down, so you can, that's a picture from last year. There is no picture that I know of from this year. Where the lines on the street were painted green, and they are still green. And I thought that graffiti is supposed to be taken care of within just a few days. So maybe this slipped by, but I thought the city should know that you're not the greatest example in the world for people who are supposed to be keeping stuff up to date. So maybe somebody will do something. Thank you.
Thank you, Reuben.
Tony, bring minutes.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Tony Bermudez. This is my first time addressing a council membership, so please bear with me and I'll be brief. Anyway, a little bit about myself. I recently retired from the Sacramento Fire Department after 30 years, and I moved to Galt about 2 years ago. I was looking for some horse property where I can get a horse, which is one of my dreams. And I looked around everywhere, and I finally found a place that was ideal. And the place where I moved to was called Golden Creek Estates. It's called Saddle Creek 1 and Saddle Creek 2. I don't know if you guys know where it is. It's south of Twin City Roads, on the west side of the railroad tracks. And Saddle Creek 1 has approximately about 34 houses, and the newer part where I live in has 31 houses. Anyway, the reason why I moved there is because I like the small-time atmosphere of Galt. I love the peace and quiet, and I wanted to have a horse. When I moved there, I knew there was a train behind my property, and people said, "You will get used to it, don't worry." And I've tried to get used to it. I don't mind the sound of the train too much, but it's the whistle blowing that really bothers me. And our property, our neighborhood is very close-knit. We all look at, in fact, I have a few of my neighbors over here. We help each other out, and in fact, when I first moved there, my neighbor gave me the keys to his tractor, right, just a couple of weeks after I moved there, so that was great. So that's the feel that we have in the neighborhood. We always try to look for each other and help each other out. And it seems like every time we get together somewhere, the biggest topic is not the drought or the weather or whatever or politics. It's the train whistles. Everyone's always asking us, "How many trains did you hear last night?" "I heard about 20 or 10. "And did you get any sleep?" "No, we didn't get any sleep." Sometimes the trains aren't too noisy, but sometimes the engineers get a little bit overzealous and honk on that horn like crazy. And my wife has called and complained, and I think they only got them mad, because the next day or next week they were honking more like crazy, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And my wife is very sensitive to that noise, and she gets pretty grouchy. But anyway, I counted one day, and there averages about 30 to 40 trains that pass by. And where I live, there's 2 tracks there, so sometimes there's 2 trains. And as the 2 trains are approaching each other, there's a competition sometimes of the engineers honking who can honk the most when they're coming to meet each other. And I'm kind of used to the whistle blowing because I was a firefighter for 30 years and a captain, and we have a pretty loud whistles in the engines. And I've noticed that they aren't really that effective. When I would drive in a fire engine, I literally would be right behind the car with a horn honking, and they would move out of the way. Because nowadays the cars are so well insulated, and they have a stereo full blast, or they have their headsets on or something. But literally, they wouldn't even know we were there until they looked in the rearview mirror and saw the red lights. So I'm not sure how effective the train noise is to begin with. Just the horn noise, I checked with OSHA, and the horn noise for the trains is usually between 96 decibels to 110 decibels. Anything over 120 decibels is damaging to your ears. And the way you can tell when you're damaging to your ears is, I've been close to trains within about 200 feet, and my ears have been tickling, and that's a sign that you're getting damage in your ears. Of course, it's just for a brief moment, but, if you do that, 30, 40 times every night for years, you will get damaged ears, I'm sorry. My house is approximately about 200 feet from the tracks, and it's pretty loud. I'm one of the second closest houses. There's another house that's only about 125 feet away from there. Like I said, the rumbling of the train doesn't bother us at all. So when we talked with the neighbors, we were saying, don't worry, just hang in there. Galt's working on making a quiet zone in Galt. And I thought, heck, that's great, I'll stick around for that. So all of a sudden, when there was a quiet zone, and then I read in the paper that it only entailed central Galt, that was very, very disappointing to us. You should have heard the neighborhood just, groan and moan because of that. We go, oh, you're kidding, they left us out. I wish they would have extended it a little further to include the Spring Street crossing and Twin Cities crossing. And we are going to be eventually part of the city. Right now we're in the county, but the way you guys are going, you're annexing a lot of property, especially if the casino goes in, you're going to annex all that property right there just north of us. My house is real close to the casino. And we don't care too much for that, but we'll put up with that. I'd rather have a casino, I think, than the train noise. So The only two questions I
Mr.
have.
Bermudez, your time is up.
I'm sorry. I just have one question now, why weren't we included and how can we go about getting included? That's it.
Thank you.
Chanel, right?
Do you, maybe Steve could give a brief response to Mr. Ramirez's question.
Be happy to. A couple of just quick reminders to council and for the public as information. The quiet zone was established. It took us some 3 years in the works to get it established. It does end at Elm Street Crossing on the north and starts at Cost Street on the south. Those are all city crossings with city streets. We had to expend several $100,000 in improvements to get through the gauntlet of federal approvals and railroad approvals and California Transportation Commission approvals and others. Public Utility Commission, I think, was involved, as well as Amtrak before we were done. And to establish a quiet zone, we had to demonstrate and improve the safety at each crossing that was to become part of the quiet zone. So the simple answer to why didn't we extend that further north is the city doesn't have jurisdiction over Spring Street or Twin Cities west of 99. That is in Sacramento County. And we did, I believe, reach out to them 3 years prior to my coming here as to their interest in partnering, and they didn't have any funding or interest in, at that time, I'm told, in participating in the project. So after 3 long years of struggle, we believe that we've sort of got the Central Galt corridor quieted down. We're still getting complaints at night and a few other things, but we believe it's improved dramatically from my ability to tell, and we are still training. They have several thousand engineers nationally that at any given time might be in California on a train, so there's a lot of training that they have to do to get all of the different train engineers trained, but we are seeing improvement gradually. So it would really become a Sacramento County request that you would need to file and see if they would be willing to reconsider. We really have no say or ability to have, that's outside our current jurisdiction, and it candidly will probably be a number of years before the city would be looking at an annexation all the way to Spring Street from what I've seen. So that's sort of the short answer.
Chanel?
Good evening, Mayor and Council and city staff. My name is Chanel Murray, and I represent Assemblymember Jim Cooper. I'm just here to give just kind of a brief update on some things that we've been doing in Galt, and just to get some feedback and hear things that the council or city staff may need help from our office. So our district office is located in Elk Grove. We do have mobile office hours the second Wednesday of every month at the Galt Market from 10 to noon. To make sure that Galt residents have easy access to it and don't have to drive all the way to Elk Grove. The Assembly member is definitely very interested in focusing on local business and business retention like you talked about today. We would love to help you with it in any way that we can with that. And a couple of events that we've had here in Galt recently were the Seniors Camp Stopper we had last month. We had about 45 seniors attend, and they got some great information from some state and local agencies, giving them information on how not to be scammed and not to fall victim to that. The Assembly member did come down for a tour about a week and a half ago to tour the methane digester at a dairy not too far from here. And we also attended the Every 15 Minutes program at Galt High School. And we're informed that there was a reduction in the amount of funding, so he's going to fight to try to get that funding back so that high school students do have access to those programs. Lastly, I just wanted to make sure that, we are accessible to you and that we're here for anything that you guys may need. And I have some business cards if anyone needs one. And hopefully I'll see you all at the second Wednesday of this month for the Galt Mobile DL. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chanel. Okay, moving on to information consent. Do I have a motion to approve consent?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
I have a motion by Vice Mayor Payne and a second by Councilmember Hewer. Call for the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Payne?
Aye.
Councilmember Hewer?
Aye.
Councilmember Campion?
Aye.
Councilmember Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Cruz?
Aye. Vote 5-0. Okay, we move on to regular calendar. Community Development Director, Department, Eastview Specific Plan. Tony.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Picking up where we left off at our last meeting, I wanted to go over a few of the project changes that have been made in response to discussions here at the council and also at the Planning Commission meetings that we've had since January. Based on those, the staff and the applicant have responded as follows. First of all, as you will recall, with regard to the proposed elementary school site, an MOU between the applicant and the elementary school district dated April 18th was put together. And the key components of that would be that the developer is going to pay $9,603 per unit in impact fees. That's about $2,000 above the required state amount. The developer would also advance $3 million from the project infrastructure CFD, subject to the council forming that CFD with a 1.9% maximum tax rate. The MOU provides for school site improvement and acquisition, and the district would withdraw all objections to the project. I also wanted to point out that we had some concerns with regard to whether or not school buses could traverse the roundabouts that were proposed along Walnut Avenue, and so staff had added a condition, we mentioned this previously, to condition B18, which is to ensure that the roundabouts would be able to accommodate school buses as well as trucks and other automobiles that would regularly traverse Walnut Avenue. With regard to the discussion between low density and medium density residential, as I mentioned at the last meeting, the applicant had agreed to label the Liberty Ranch villages that had lots that were either 6,500 less than 6,500 square feet in area and or less than 65 feet in width with a medium density residential land use designation and R2 zoning, and this was as opposed to the previous LDR and R1C zoning. With regard to the development standards, there have been a few changes with regard to those as well. First of all of the lots in Eastview, including Liberty Ranch, that are zoned R1, so that would be the non-participating properties as well, will meet all development code standards at this point. That includes setbacks, including front yard setbacks, lot width, determination of the lot width along curves, etc. With regard to property zone commercial, open space, public, etc., and the non-participating property zone R2, those will continue to meet all development code standards. With regard to the Liberty Ranch lots that are in the R2 zone, they will have a minimum 15 front yard setback, which is allowed per code now versus the 12.5%. The difference, though, is that the code currently allows only porches and side-facing garages to come within 15 feet of the front property line. In this case, the applicant is still asking for the living area to also be within 15 feet. So the overall building envelope would potentially be the same, but we would be adding or allowing the addition of living area, and that would only be for the R2 lots, not the R1 lots. The lots would also have a minimum 50-foot width versus 55-foot per the code, and the minimum lot size would be 5,250 square feet versus 5,500, which is what the code currently requires. Additionally, provisions for the asphalt roofs have been removed from the specific plan. There was one final exhibit at the end of Chapter 7 that still had them in there. It caught that will be removed as well, so it'll just be tile roofing on the all of the residential units. With regard to the two private recreation areas, those were the two little 1.5-acre lots that were still are proposed along Dead Man Gulch. At this point, while there was a discussion with regard to whether or not the applicant should be granted a 50% credit for development of these areas towards the park's Quimby fee, project's park Quimby fees. And so the applicant has agreed that although some of the amenities such as the pool and the clubhouse will be deleted from the rec areas, what they will still build and maintain through the HOA are basically parklets, tot lots, and whatnot. And the applicant has agreed not to pursue a 50% credit at this point towards the Quimby fees. Regarding our, the development, for the project, the development agreement, I should say, just to, basically go over some of the changes that staff has worked through the process on and are bringing to you this evening, is to remind you that the DA does not lock in any fees or charges. This is kind of unique. Most DAs do, but in this case it does not. So any fee in effect citywide, includes fees that may be changed citywide later on down the line, would be paid by the applicant. The term of the DA was reduced from 30 years down to 15 years. There is a 5-year extension available, but it would be based upon the installation of $20 million of infrastructure. The developer is also required to annex into either CFD 2005 or, as I mentioned previously, a separate financing district for the infrastructure, schools, etc. The infrastructure CFD had originally requested a maximum 2% tax rate. Staff felt that that was a little too high for future homeowners out in the area and had reduced it to 1.8%. As I mentioned, we did allow it to be raised potentially to 1.9% if it is used, that extra funding to finance part of the cost of the school facilities. And then finally, with regard to the VA, the credit for construction of public facilities is limited to the amount estimated in the fee programs that the city has. We also revised several sections of the DA. 4.4.2 was amended to allow credit for construction of facilities per the city fee program only if the city is required and authorized by the city. So extra facilities would be just basically a gift to the city from the developer, so to speak. Section 4.4.2 amends the DA to notice that we will pursue expansion of the wastewater treatment plant if capacity is reached within 4 years, and the reservation applies to villages, not phases. Section 4.4.6 was amended to basically allow the 2 small parks to be used for marketing. These would be the 2.9 and the 4-acre parks. Basically be limited to passive uses for as long as marketing occurs, or for 15 years, whichever occurs first, in the offer of dedication. And that would be in exchange for the applicant developing them and then offering them to the city for dedication. And if we accept them, that the parks would be constructed to city standards at the time that we accepted the dedication. Finally, section 4.4.7 was amended to state that the city will eventually maintain the wetlands subject to payment from the applicant of a fee, charge, or assessment. However, we eliminated the endowment option with regard to that. Finally, we've got a couple of new, brand new revisions that were made since our last meeting. That was a new section 4.4.9 was added, and that's to reflect the MOU between the applicant and the school district. And 4.4.10 was added to discuss minimum home sizes as well as minimum house plans and elevations. You can see in this chart, the smallest lot, a 1-story house would be 1,500 square feet, a 2-story, 1,800 square feet. Your medium to larger size lots would be a minimum 2,000 square foot house size, and then any of the largest lots would be a minimum 2,200 square foot lot size, and that house size, and that would be for 1 or 2-story units. Our city standards, we have basically a table that determines, based on the size of the project, or in this case the size of the village, that developer provide at least a minimum of 3 house plans and a minimum of 3 elevations for each house plan. So you've got a minimum of 9 for the smallest developments, and the mix grows larger, and so the applicant would be required to also adhere to those standard requirements that we have for any development here in the city. And that would also ensure that you have a good mix of houses, that you don't just have a bunch of the smallest houses, but instead you do have a minimum, say 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 for your smallest lots and villages, etc. So with that, those are the changes that we've worked out with the developer at this point to get us to where we are this evening. We had taken at our last meeting a couple of actions. The City Council had approved moving forward with the annexation, as well as certified the environmental impact report prepared for the project. You've also introduced the ordinance for the pre-zoning of the project of a majority vote. This evening we've got several other actions to take. Your staff report has a discussion of what each of those actions are, but I'll briefly go through those. Your first would be to adopt the resolution which approves the general plan land use map amendments, or the general plan amendment, in other words, vesting tentative maps for Liberty Ranch and the Eastview specific plan. More specifically, with regard to the general plan amendment and approval, this would be just to change the land use map and not any of the text within the policy document of the general plan itself. As a reminder, the existing general plan land use map is on the left. The proposed Eastview projects map would be here on the right. The differences between are that the MHDR, typo here, the MHDR, medium high density residential, would be eliminated altogether. High density would be reconfigured along Walnut, eliminated from the future growth area. That would become low density residential in that area. The medium density residential, as we've discussed, would be increased in the Liberty Ranch area. Two park areas, the 2.9 and the 4 acre park areas, are added to the proposed land use map. They are not currently required by the general plan. The 2 acre northeastern commercial area would be replaced instead with additional low density residential housing, as well as open space with a formal city entry at that point, which would be constructed and provided by the applicant. The school, as we've discussed it previously, has been relocated slightly to the northeast, and the size is now 8.9 acres, down from 10 acres. However, the adjacent park is still available and would be available for shared use with the school. The overall number of units has been reduced in Eastview by 98 from what the general plan currently calls for, and then there are minor roadway reconfigurations. Also within this recommended approval would be the specific plan approval, and that would be approving the entire Eastview specific plan as presented with the revision. Note that if there are standards that that are basically silent in the document, for instance, setback standards for accessory structures, that means that we would defer to what the code requires. Finally, in this particular resolution, we would be recommending that you approve the 3 vesting subdivision, tentative subdivision maps. Those again are the large lot phasing map, which creates the largest lots for basically your phasing and securing financing and infrastructure improvements. The large lot villages map, which creates the individual residential villages as well as the lots for the parks, the school, etc. And then the small lot map, which specifies all of the individual single-family lots within each of the villages. In addition to that recommendation, we also recommend that you adopt the ordinance approving the pre-zoning, which was, again, it was introduced at the last meeting, and that would be to approve the pre-zoning for this project. The pre-zoning would be consistent with the general plan land use map as amended, as well as with the Eastview specific plan. Note that this only applies to the pre-zoning map, and again, there are no amendments to the development code. And just real quickly, again, on the left is proposed zoning map. It's a little hard to see, but all of those numbers are consistent with the proposed land use map there with regard to medium density, low density, etc. And finally, we have the recommendation to, again, try to introduce the ordinance approving the development agreement for the Liberty Ranch portion of the Eastview project. As you will recall, at our last meeting, we had a 2-2 vote, and therefore this particular ordinance was not introduced. If it is introduced this evening, then it would be brought back to you at our next council meeting on the 17th for adoption. And with that, these again are just the recommendations for action combined for convenience. Otherwise, I'm available for questions.
Very good. Questions from council?
I did on your presentation under the private recreation areas. You indicated the applicant will still be constructing other amenities. Apparently, they opted not to provide the pool and clubhouse. Is that correct? Am I reading that correctly?
Correct.
Do you know what the other amenities are?
Well, again, they would be more in tune to a standard park with regard to tot lots, picnic areas, parking areas, and whatnot. Basically, facilities that could be used and maintained, used by the public and easily maintained by the HOA.
And then on the next page, it talked about, under section 4.4.2, it says it's amended to allow credit for construction of facilities per city fee program only if facility is required or authorized by the city. But you talked about other gifts, and what are the other gifts that you were referring to?
Well, what I'm saying is if they built something above and beyond that was not required or authorized by the staff to construct, then basically they are doing it out of their own pocket. We would not be reimbursing them for those above and beyond facilities.
Well, we don't know of anything at this point.
No, we don't.
Thank you. I think to clarify things on under section 4.4.6, says it was amended to allow the two smaller parks to be used for marketing and passive use. This is the 4-acre and the 2.9
acres, correct.
2.9 acres, which are basically the two biggest parks in the subdivision, aren't they?
Well, we still have the 5.1 acre immediately south of the school site, so that would be your largest one.
Or adjacent to the school site, the joint use facility. So it wouldn't be necessarily for active recreation. It would have to be used in conjunction with school facilities and so forth. But it made it sound as though it would have to be used for passive use for a period of no less than 15 years from the offer of dedication. But isn't, in exchange, the applicant will develop them and is offering to the city for dedication. Is there a credit given or any compensation given or considered as part of that development agreement? Because it would make it sound as though this was free.
It would be your standard Quimby and Parkland dedication requirements, but nothing above and beyond that type of credit.
So there is a credit given.
Exactly, as far as what we would normally do for public parks, because these are essentially public parks. They will become public parks.
Okay. But the difference is that it's basically held is private property for 15 years, but the credit is given on day one when the offer of dedication is made, not the acceptance. Isn't that what the agreement says?
I believe so, yes, that's correct. And it would be, just to clarify, it's the marketing period or 15 years, whichever comes first. So they build out beforehand, then they will offer the dedication.
Has any other information come forward that would indicate what types of restrictions the city can expect to be imposed on people going to use that property?
The applicant has not provided any other additional information at this point. So again, we can assume that the types of uses that would be allowed out there would be your passive park types, playgrounds, tot lots, but not, say, for instance, goalposts being set up for a football game or whatnot in those areas.
Or someone wanting to have a birthday party or a picnic?
Well, again,
potentially.
These are proposed to be built out with picnic areas, so the applicant could potentially clarify, but I don't believe that there have been actual restrictions on, again, passive uses such as picnics.
So we don't know what facilities are planned at this point?
Not the precise ones. Again, we'll see those when they come through and they are vetted through the Parks Department and whatnot. The specific plan provides illustrations as to what we can typically see in these two areas, again, with regard to trails, again, passive rec areas, shade areas, picnic areas, and whatnot. So we can expect to see those constructed on those two park areas.
Mr. Mo, but those parks, if I understand correctly, will be the cost of maintaining them and will be by the developer as long as they're under the agreement, correct?
That's correct. The developer will maintain the parks during the time that they maintain control over the property. It also will be private property. They will continue to pay taxes on the property during that period.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Not on the presentation, no.
Okay. I do have two public comments on here. Solange Altman.
Good evening, Mayor Cruz, members of the City Council, and staff. My name is Solange Gonzalez-Altman. My family owns the property located at 13632 Moringa Road in Galt. It is a 119-acre farm that has been dubbed by the staff as the Notch. We're immediately to the east of the property that was just, that commercial property that was just described by your Economic Development Director. My family moved to Galt in 1966. My father was a dairy farmer, and a dairy was operated on the property until 2004. When we optioned it for development, that all fell through when the economic recession hit. When we came to Galt, it was a community of 2,500 people. Now there are 25,000. It's a nicer place now, even though there was a bowling alley and a movie theater in 1966. We believe growth is good for Galt. But we object to the currently proposed Eastview specific plan and annexation. If the project was scaled back and modified into smaller segments, our concerns might be addressed, and these are our concerns about the plan. The city shouldn't be approving such a large project on the outskirts of town without transit in place. That isn't smart growth. This project will require the expansion of Highway 99 to 3 lanes in both directions. It will require completion of a new overpass. The city spent more than $30 million to build the Galt interchange. Caltrans has no plans to expand 99 to 3 lanes or to build an overpass. No money has been set aside to do that. Taxpayers will end up paying for that expansion, and commuters will bear the delays and danger that will be caused by additional traffic. The Twin Cities exit will end up looking up like Elk Grove Boulevard did after Elk Grove approved too much growth without the needed infrastructure. I mean, people have to understand this is 500 acres is coming into the city from the outskirts. 1,700 homes are to be built, 6,000 people. It will increase the population of Galt by 25%. I would also note that the city's environmental review is inadequate to support the proposed approvals before the council this evening. For example, the final EIR's responses to comments notes that the draft EIR incorrectly determined that the project would not result in the loss of prime farmland. That's not true. That land is prime farmland. Given the final EIR's conclusion that the project would result in the loss of prime farmland, the city was required to propose mitigation to reduce the impact to a less than significant level as requested by the Sacramento County LAFCO, or recirculate the EIR under CEQA. The city did neither. Not only is this a CEQA violation, the Sacramento County LAFCO will not be able to utilize the document to support the city's annexation approval you are voting on tonight. Moreover, given the city acknowledgement that the project would result in the conversion of prime farmland as defined by the Sacramento LAFCO, the city should phase its approval of the project based on the city's housing needs. I called the planning department today and learned that there are 767 entitled vacant lots in Galt. Last year, Galt issued 71 building permits. At this rate, you have enough inventory at the present time to build for 10 years. Specifically, Chapter 4 of the Sacramento County LAFCO's General Standards states, annexation is appropriate if development of all or a substantial portion of the subject land is likely to occur within 5 years. In the case of very large developments, annexation should be phased whenever feasible. If the Commission finds phasing infeasible for specific reasons, it may approve annexation if all or a substantial portion of the subject land is likely to develop within a reasonable period of time. 15 years with a 5-year extension is not a reasonable period of time. I would also note in my limited remaining time, the final EIR failed to include Wilton Rancheria Casino Project in its cumulative analysis as requested by Sacramento County and required by CEQA. The fact that definitive information was not available does not excuse the city's failure. CEQA requires the city to engage in reasonable forecasting. Sacramento LAFCO's comments also noted that the EIR contemplated the construction of off-site infrastructure to provide needed supply for treatment for water and wastewater. CEQA requires that the potential environmental effects of implementing mitigation measures be assessed in the EIR. The city failed to squarely address this issue. The city similarly failed to address comments on the project's potential contribution to greenhouse gases and climate change.
Excuse me, Mrs. Altman, your time is up.
You know what? I have two other family members who also wanted to speak, if they could cede my time. This is such an important thing for Galt. I'm almost done. If you could just give me 2 more minutes. 2 minutes. The ERA's conclusions that the project will result in a less than significant impact in this area are not supportable. As the Sacramento Lab Code noted in its comments, this conclusion relating to the project's design features and resulting reductions are not explained in the EIR. Moreover, the city fails to discuss transit and the project's inconsistencies with SACOG's, MTP, and SDS. The EIR unsupported statement that the project is generally consistent does not allow for any meaningful comments. The city failed to respond to comments regarding project's impact on groundwater supplies in light of the recent extended drought and future regulations like the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. In approving this project, what you are doing is you are tying your hands. You are putting yourself in a straitjacket. If you have a Hilmar Cheese that approaches you wanting to do a big industrial project that will require sewage treatment capacity, water, if you have a company like Gallo Glass wanting to come here to make wine bottles for the burgeoning wine industry that we have in Lodi, you will not be able to approve those projects because of the commitments you are making to this developer now. You need to do smart growth and think about the future. And if you go forward with this project, the legacy that you leave to Galt will not be a good one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Addison, I'm not going to try to butcher the name, Cover.
That's close enough. Good job. But I have no comments tonight.
All right, sir, thank you. All right, do I have a motion at this point?
Are you going to open you going to close public hearing?
Public hearing is not even open. Public hearing was closed last meeting. This is just public comment at this point.
Oh, okay. So there is no more public
That is correct.
public comment. I do have a couple more issues I'd like to discuss with council. One, in the development agreement under section 4.4.2 wastewater, and I've talked about this before with the council, that I disagree that the city should be giving special consideration in terms of the will serve letters. The city has never done will serve letters in its history. But I think what bothers me most is when I read this and I did a little bit more research, it says, towards the end of the paragraph, it says, in addition, upon filing of a phased final subdivision map and payment of fees for at least 30% of the units in that village within the phase of the project, the city will issue a will serve letter that will reserve capacity for a period of 2 years for the balance of the units in the subdivision village up to a maximum of 50 units. Well, that sounds all good and well until you look at it. There are 23 villages. The average number of units is 51 units. So by paying the fee of 30%, a 70% discount, you're reserving virtually all the capacity for the entire subdivision. If this city council is bent on allowing will serve letters, I think the least you could do is require the developer to pay the full cost of that fee. Why would you give them a 70% discount? It's on. Oh. That's a question. I would just ask, I've asked a lot of questions of this council, and I have heard limited or no discussion on many of the subjects that have been discussed up here. And it concerns me that there is a lack of discussion. So I would throw that out there and like to hear from the balance of the council.
So Kurt, are you proposing that instead of having, it'd be 30%, that will serve letters won't be given until it's 100%? I mean, if I'm a builder and I'm going to build 50 homes in my village that I bought from Calsa, so instead of it just being 30%, are you saying if they could reserve capacity by paying fees for 100% of the water, the
Sewer connection fee.
Sewer connection fee?
Right.
I mean, would you feel better if, I mean, somewhere between 30 and 100%, right? So where do we do that? Is it 50%? Is it 75%? Is it 100%?
Why would you want to guarantee something when it has not been paid for, is the question. Why would you guarantee something that has not been paid for?
So your proposal is that
To the detriment.
that will preserve it, that will reserve capacity and give will serve letters for all units that are paid. So whether it's 30% or 100%
Yeah,
or.
if they only choose to buy 30% of them, they pay for the full cost of whatever the 30% of that unit is. But he doesn't get to reserve the entire village, which is up to 50 units, at a 70% cost reduction. That's a disadvantage to every other subdivider in this city.
In the past, you've been concerned regarding paying all fees. So,
Yes.
so I know you still have that concern. I could tell that look on your face. Okay, but are you okay at this point if we were to amend the development agreement to have it be that if they, for whatever units they pay those sewage connection fee for, whether it's 30%, 100%, that we would reserve capacity for?
For every will serve letter they would like to receive, you pay the fee associated with that will serve letter.
Okay, I could.
And I only think that's reasonable.
I could see, yeah, I can believe that is reasonable.
So, and I'm just saying, because I don't think will serve letters should be given in the first place. But if you are gonna do it, they ought to at least have to pay for it. Because every other developer in the past has had to pay not only the sewer fee, they've had to pay the water fee, the impact fees, the building permit fee in order to get that permit, because that's the only way you got a guarantee to be served by the wastewater treatment plant. This is a huge discount even in and of itself. I don't know, other council?
Well, I'm just wondering, we've approved a few other projects recently. How would they compare to this?
They paid the full amount. They didn't get a discount.
Did they do the will serve letters? Is that part of their agreement?
Current practice is first come, first served based on payment of connection fees for water and sewer. And those are typically paid upon the pulling of a building permit on a lot-by-lot basis. So we don't really have a will serve process. Is when you pull your permit and begin your final entitlement to build, we then sell you capacity for that lot through our connection fees.
And that is the way it has been, Barbara, when you get that permit. This is significantly different. It's a huge advantage to this subdivider over every other subdivider in the community. Huge.
I guess my question is, what's the purpose? Why are we stepping outside the bounds?
So, Mr. Mayor, if I could answer that question. So, the reason staff is recommending this particular provision to the City Council is because this is a unique project. This is the total area is 500 acres for Eastview. The project is something like 350 acres to build close to 1,500 units. So there is no other comparison within this community as far as the type of master plan community that is before you this evening. And from staff's perspective, the goal was to provide incentive to induce this developer to make a level of commitment that he's prepared to make in this community. And so one of the concessions that the developer has requested, which is in this document, is to provide that upon the payment of 100% of the fees on 30% of the units in the village, that the balance of the units up to 50 within that village would be reserved for a 2-year period of time. So that is one consideration that the developer has requested, that is presented in the development agreement, and staff is recommending the development agreement to the City Council because we think that basically this project is a good project for this community.
When you just said 100% of the fees, all fees are just the water sewer connection?
Just on the sewer connection fee.
100% of 30%. You have to get that, you said 30%.
That's correct.
Which is saying just a little differently than what I said, but it's the same thing.
If I may, point you to the wording of section 4.4.2. I think you need to read the prior sentence, and maybe we need to determine if we're sufficiently clear here. My interpretation of the section is that they would have to pay 100% of the sewer connection fees for a unit or a village within a phase, and in addition, upon paying 100% of the fees for 30% of the units, after paying their wastewater connection fees for the entire unit or village, then we would give them a 2-year will serve protection, and only 2 years. So that's how I'm reading this, and so I would look at our city attorney or the developer's attorney, if, that would be how Public Works would be interpreting this. The city will issue a will serve letter and reserve capacity upon developer's payment of wastewater connection fees for a unit or village. There's no 30%, it's whatever phase they're looking to reserve capacity. And that's no different from a sewer reservation than our current policy of first come, first served. They would pay their connection fees prior to reservation. I'm not sure that's how people are planning to interpret this, but that's how I'm reading the section as your Public Works director.
Of a unit or a village?
I don't know if I understand the point that you're making, but,
Well, prior to sewer reservation for a 2-year period,
mhm.
they must pay their wastewater connection fees for the unit or village they're attempting to reserve capacity for.
It says a unit, not the unit.
So is a unit an individual lot? Okay. Or is a unit a group of lots?
I don't know what the unit is in there.
We may want to
I think that you're trying to draw a distinction where there was not intended to be one. I mean, this is.
That's why I'm asking for clarification
is,
on what our intent is here.
The intent is that on a final subdivision map for a particular village, if the developer or the builder pays the fee on 30% of the units in that village, that we will then reserve capacity on the balance of the units in that subdivision for 2 years, up to a maximum of 50.
Yeah, I don't understand what the sentence before that. I do understand what you just said, which is basically every one of the villages averages 50 units, and you would get a 70% discount because you only pay 30% of the fee for up to 50 units. Well, on average, you've got 50 in there, so you basically and effectively reserve the entire village.
When we're talking about fees, are we saying the connection fees?
Connection
Or
fees.
the permit fees, everything?
I'm saying the fees related to the just exclusively wastewater.
Wastewater connection. Yes.
Mr. Belcher, you said something.
I thought the public hearing was closed.
Would you like to fill out the speaker sheet?
Do it in arrears. Happy to fill it out, and I'm really just going to offer one suggestion. I think you're looking at this in a different scope. For practical realities, we're only going to be developing a phase at a time. Each of those phases have about 300 units. So if you do the math, in reality, for a period of 2 years, we are asking for a reservation of about 200 of those 300 units, so that the merchant builder, if for reasons of recessions or whatever, he has to slow down, he at least won't go away and leave the lot standing there and we're all stuck. So I think the magnitude of order here is not 1,500 units reserving 70% of those over any period of time, because we are going to be working phase at a time. Consequently, we are asking for that for the purposes of not losing the merchant builder that we may have sold a property to. And recessions happen, we all see that.
Thank you.
Sharon?
Yes, just as a point of order, this applicant has met with all of you. We've had multiple hearings. And I think it's really important that the council be allowed space to discuss the agreement without being lobbied constantly. There are state bills in right now to prohibit this type of lobbying where an applicant with a definite financial interest in this project is able to intervene in this way. If you're going to open public comment and you want to invite the public in and rehash this, I think that's great, but to have a constant back and forth with the applicant that interferes with the process of you making important decisions, I think is out of order.
Thank you for your comment. Anything further from council?
Do we have, does council, well, I would entertain a motion to make a change to the development agreement, based on what I have just told you. That you would not get the discount of 70%, but if you wanted the will serve letter, you would pay the connection fee on a unit by unit basis. That's my motion. To amend that, to amend section 4.4.2.
You have a motion on the floor by Councilmember Sampson, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Ewing. Any further discussion?
Regarding the motion that, I understand what you're saying. However, I think you have to also consider this is a business. And I can understand where, if you're a builder, you want to be sure that you can have access to water and sewer. So to me, it's reasonable that what is written is reasonable. I will not be
Okay.
So just, Mr. Mayor, just as a point of clarification before you call the question. So that change would essentially eliminate the last sentence of 4442, and it would leave intact the sentence that says the city will issue a will serve letter in reserved capacity upon developer's payment of a wastewater connection fee for a unit. That whole section, that whole sentence regarding the 30% would effectively just come out. Is that the motion maker's intent?
I'm reading it, Mr. Mayor.
I just want to make sure that I can effectively capture in the DA what the motion is reflecting.
Yes, and the rest of it, I believe, or they would have the ability to pay the fee, and not that it's mandatory.
So, I mean, the sentence before that really provides that option. You pay the fee, you get a will serve letter, and we reserve capacity.
For a unit or a village.
The last sentence.
That's fine. And then, so
it would be to strike that last sentence of 4442. Is that your intent?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion?
Vice Mayor Payne? Councilmember Hewer?
Aye.
Councilmember Campion?
Aye.
Councilmember Powers?
No.
Mayor Cruz?
No. Motion fails. Any further discussion?
I still have questions on the DA I'd like to raise. On the latest amendment that we received, dealt with home sizes and floor plans, section 4.4.10. It's page 8 of the development agreement in your staff report. The concern I have is that most, and I'm not even sure, I tried to, I requested information from staff, but I couldn't tell how many units were in the lot size. This deals with the minimum lot size and home square footage allocation. Did you find that, Barbara?
No.
But it should be, it's going to be about the middle of your report. You've got it. You're right on it. Well,
You wanna know how many houses it is?
No. What I'm saying is there's, I'll wait till she gets ready, but a minimum house of 1,500 square feet. That still means every house now 1,500 square feet. I'm going to suggest breaking it out by a percentage in this category from 5,000 to 5,900. These I'm not too worried about, but here I think you should have some requirements for. I'm just going to throw it out there. I would appreciate it. Okay. On the lot sizes from 5,000 to 59, or to 6,000 square feet effectively, it says they'll build a minimum house size of 1,800 square feet for a two-story and 1,500 for a single-story. My concern is that I think that there should be a breakdown, so that it's unlikely that all homes will be 1,500 square feet, but if given the enormity of benefit that this agreement gives to the developer, I think the city should have some level of guarantee that you're going to have a variety of house size. And so what I would suggest is looking at no more than 25% in that category of lot size, 5,000 to 6,000 square feet. No more than 25% of those be the 1,500 square feet. And that you do either a graduated or some other percentage. Maybe you go 25% at 1,800 square feet. But I think that it would be important to make sure that we've got some minimum guarantees that we don't end up with all 1,500 square foot homes.
I thought we agreed they all had to be 1,800. Am I missing something here?
No, it says 15.
Oh,
It says 1,500 on your single story, 18 on two story. So what I'm saying is no more than 1,500, no more than 25% could be 1,500 square feet or less, and 25% at 1,800 square feet, which falls in line with the two-story, the minimum two-story.
25% of the homes, so you're proposing 25% of the homes would be between 15 to 18.
Right.
And then 25% between 18
to 2,000 or whatever. I mean, or the balance should be higher, is what I'm saying. But 1,800 would be your minimum, like it is for the two-story.
And 25 would be the two.
So part of it is that, depending on how many homes are built, it would be just the elevations, like there had to be 3 elevations for.
3 elevations,
Or
three floor plans, and then 3 different, and no fewer than 3 different elevations.
I'm thinking the market is going to determine how many of the homes are going to be.
25, 25, 25, 25.
The demand, what people want to afford.
So Kurt, is your main concern with the properties that are between 5,000 to 6,000?
Yeah, I'm not concerned about
because the properties over that have pretty decent housing sizes.
Sure.
So your concern is the what we refer to as the small lots, or
right.
the square footage lots that are smaller. That there be some sort of guarantee that they won't all be 1,500 square foot homes.
Exactly it.
My house is 1,500 square feet, and it's not small. I mean, to me, it's not small. It's not.
But in your subdivision, they aren't all 1,500 square foot homes.
They vary.
Yeah, small.
It's very much varies.
And again, I think the market's going to determine what they decide to build. And I think that's the way it should be. I think what the people want and need is what we should help provide.
Well, it depends on just that, the market. And if the market goes down, then you will end up with small lots on large homes or small lots on small lots. I mean, you can go out in the northeast area and you can see where you have 1,200 square foot homes on 10,000 square foot lots, because that's where the market was. And they built that house. It doesn't look right, but the owner owned the property and was able to build whatever product they wanted. At the time, that was the only product that was selling. So what this does is try to at least keep some.
Are you saying you don't want a small house on a bigger lot?
No, I'm not saying that.
I'm not following you. What I hear you say is you want to dictate the certain percentage of the homes on are we talking about the village, are going to be only 1,500 square feet?
No.
Does that have more than that?
No, I'm not saying that.
Well, I'm asking.
That's not what I'm saying at all.
Well, okay.
What I said was that no more than 25% of them could be down to 1,500 square feet. The rest would have to be larger.
Would have to be large.
Right.
So we are dictating to them.
Yes, sure. It's the same thing that the Planning Commission has done in the past. When they have hearings to go through architectural review, you are picking a home size and the elevations. It's the same thing, except that here it's in the development agreement.
So Kurt, if that came before without this amendment or without this in there, I guess I need to hear what your concern is. So you don't believe when this went before the Planning Commission that they would be able to impose that restriction at that time?
I don't know.
So if it came before the Planning Commission and they were going to build all 1,500 square foot homes in 100 square foot homes, even if they were doing 3 floor plans and 3 elevations, they were all that size. Wouldn't the Planning Commission at that time, and that's my question, wouldn't they at that time be able to enter the restriction that says, no, we want a variety of house sizes, or we want a different, or would they not be able to do that? I guess that's my question for staff.
It doesn't say that in the agreement. What it says is they could build, the minimum size is 1,500 square feet. That's what this agreement says.
I understand,
So
for single family.
he would be able to build 1,500 square feet.
The builder, okay.
In answer to your question, though, Councilmember, the Planning Commission has the discretion to determine whether or not they would approve certain type of floor plan and whatnot. So the answer would be yes, they could make that determination.
On floor plans or square footage?
On floor plans, square footage, and whatnot. We have had that happen. For instance, the KB project that's going through Creekside 3, for instance, there was the smallest plan that was proposed at the time was eliminated by the Planning Commission because they determined it was too small. So that did occur. That could happen again.
But does that requirement, is it eliminated as part of the development agreement for properties in the R2? I mean, I don't know. We've taken so many things out of what is in the existing development standards and what is not. I don't know.
At this point, this would only apply to the R2 lots because, again, the R1 lots in this proposal at this point are now consistent with the development code at minimum 6,500 square feet. And so as you see here, anything that is within that realm would be a minimum 2,000 square feet, and if they're over 7,000 square feet, then they'd have to have a minimum house size of 2,200 square feet. So this minimum would only apply to the R2 zone lots.
But that's what I'm saying, and in here we have other exceptions that exempt out the R2 zone as well. I mean, the R2 zone is the only one that's not subject to the development code, correct?
It is subject to everything in the development code at this point, with the exception of, again, that 15-foot setback to the front property line for the living area, the minimum lot size going down to 5,250 square feet, and the frontage of 50 feet.
Those are the only three things.
Those are the only three things at this point. Your side, rear setbacks, accessory structures, whatnot, they would all be consistent with the development code.
Mr. Rudolph, what is your interpretation?
So
And I know you worked on this, and that's I really appreciate the changes that were made.
So here's here's how I would weigh in on this. The anticipation or the expectation of the city by virtue of this provision is that there's going to be a variety of housing sizes within a particular village by virtue of having a minimum number of floor plans and 3 exterior elevations for each floor plan. So that's the intent, to have a diversity of housing. And my argument would be that imposing a percentage restriction at the Planning Commission at say the 25% level would be consistent with the intent of the development agreement. Now, I think at some point that percentage may become high enough where the developer or the builder at the time, who becomes the person that gets the benefit of this development agreement for their village, they may say that that it is not consistent. So I think as as the percentage would increase, there would be a higher chance of a dispute with the developer over it. But I think that clearly the intent of the agreement is to have a diversity of housing types within each village, and my opinion would be that a 25% limitation imposed by the Planning Commission would be consistent with this agreement.
At 25%.
Well, it's no more than 25% be 1,500. My interpretation would be that that is consistent with the spirit of this particular provision. I don't believe that if that type of requirement were imposed by the Planning Commission, my opinion would be that that is consistent with the language of 4410.
So the Planning Commission, okay.
But the point I was making is I think at some point, if that number were, 50%, then the ability to enforce that provision at some level is going to be in question.
So that said, could and maybe it's reasonable to think that might happen, could a village be a builder could come into a village and say, maybe they're going to build homes between 1,500 and 1,800, and they're going to build single story because maybe they're building age-restricted housing or something. I mean, you start looking at double, there would still be the requirement to have 3 different floor plans and 9 different elevations, correct? Because that still stands as an agreement upon that there would be that.
That's correct.
Because maybe that's reasonable that could happen, right? I mean, there could be some builder comes in and says, gosh, I'd like to build this village and I'd like it to be age restricted and smaller homes for people. I kind of dislike the idea that we would take that away from the fact that there might be that kind of project, but I guess I also want to know that the Planning Commission and the city, the Planning Department still has the discretion to say, this isn't a good mix, or we think that there needs to be less of these small ones, and maybe there needs to be some 1,800 or 2,000, maybe some better choices. And we still could, you're telling me that you think as long as we were reasonable and that we would be meeting the intent of the agreement.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, yes.
That sounds a little confusing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know that we've covered all scenarios, but I think that the important point is that the floor plans and the elevations are going to have to come before the Planning Commission for review and approval, and that is a discretionary hearing, and I believe that the Planning Commission will have discretion to impose.
The CA doesn't take that away from us. Doesn't take that away from the city, that discretion.
That's correct. Now, it doesn't take that discretion away. However, for example, if you look at 5,000, 5,900, minimum home size is 1,815. The Planning Commission could not say minimum home size will be 2,000 for 2-story and 1,600 for single-story. That would be right. I mean, that would be a clear inconsistency with the development agreement. So yes, they have discretion. They would need to abide by the terms that are in Section 4410.
I'm really glad we got rid of the asphalt composition roofs. Okay, I think I understand. You have, Councilman Campion, do you have?
Okay. We'll break these into 3 pieces. On number 1, adopting a resolution approving the proposed amendment. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
I have a motion by Vice Mayor Payne. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember.
So just as a point of clarification before you call the question, so the motion is to adopt the resolution approving the proposed amendment to the general plan land use map, Eastview specific plan, and the vesting tentative maps for the Liberty Ranch component of the Eastview specific plan project.
And a second by Councilmember Howard. Any further discussion? Call for the vote.
Vice Mayor Payne? Councilmember Hewer?
Aye.
Councilmember Campion?
No.
Councilmember Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Cruz?
Passes 4-1. Councilman Campion abstained. On number 2, adopt an ordinance, number 2016-04, approving the proposed pre-zoning for the Eastview Civic Plan project. Do I have a motion to that effect?
Make a motion to approve?
I have a motion by Councilmember Hewer, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Payne. Any further discussion on that? Call for the vote.
Vice Mayor Payne? Councilmember Hewer?
Aye.
Councilmember Campion?
No.
Councilmember Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Cruz?
Aye. We have another 4-1, with Councilman Campion second. And number 3, introduce an ordinance approving the pre-annexation and development agreement for the Liberty Ranch portion of the Eastview specific plan project, waiving full reading and continue to the next regular meeting for adoption. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Powers, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Payne. Any further discussion? Call for the vote.
I would, discussion.
Go ahead.
I just would like to say that, I appreciate the fact of what staff and the developer did to come to some agreement and some resolution on a lot of the issues. I think that Councilman Campion brings up some really good issues, and I hope that, that we go forward in the spirit of cooperation and understanding that we really don't want, I guess I still have some concerns that we're going forward with the trust that the developer wants this project to be as successful as us and wants it to be a community we could all be proud of, and that that we don't end up with the fear that was out there, or that people do have some fears. You get small lots and a lot of small homes. I think that we've tried to reach some agreement of that not happening, and I sincerely hope that SunCal and the associates really know that we're not wanting to see that kind of development come forward, that we really want this to be a quality development. Because I think that Councilman Campion brings up some good points.
Mm-hmm.
And even though the council as a majority might not agree with it, I think it's stuff that I think it's issues that the city and the planning department need to hear and know that the council has that concern. That part of the council has that concern. That said, let's call for, go ahead. Go ahead.
Vice Mayor Payne? Councilmember Hewer?
Aye.
Councilmember Campion?
No.
Councilmember Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Cruz?
All right. Moving on to the Finance Department. Fiscal year 2016 third quarter update. There we go.
Good evening, Mayor Cruz, members of the council. I just wanted to say this is my first presentation to you, and my habit and my practice has always been to stand at a podium, so here I am. As I get more comfortable with golf, I may do it from my chair, but now I'm going to stand here. So, as you know, last quarter, our staff members, Greg Lucido and Matt Boring, put together a new format for the quarterly report. And this is a work in progress, and we had a few bugs in it still. So before the meeting started tonight, I gave you updates. I handed out and left at your places an update to the quarterly report and also an update to the PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to present to you this evening. So this is the financial report for the fiscal period ending March 31st. which is the third quarter of this current fiscal year. What we're including in here is we're not including every single fund of the city, but we are including the general fund, major R, culture, recreation, the enterprise funds, and the lighting and landscaping district funds. Those are the major operating funds of the city. And the budget amounts in the columns called budget, those all contain carry forwards and encumbrances and so forth. So the budgeted column has a beginning fund balance that is from the adopted midterm budget. That's the budget that you adopted last June of 2015. The year-to-date column has a beginning fund balance that's reconciled to the audited financial reports for the period ending June 30th, 15. Those numbers will be different. The budgeted amount would not have included any year-end adjustments, accruals, or final year-end entries. So as you work through here, you'll see some difference in those beginning numbers. And just bear in mind that the number in the year-to-date column is the audited number. I think I already said this, expenditures all include encumbrances, and generally at this point in the year we're expecting to be 75% through the budget, because we're 75% through the year. Property taxes and sales taxes do not come in, well, in fact, most of our revenues and expenses do not occur in 12 equal installments. Some things are a bit more cyclical. Property taxes, we'll receive the balance of those in April and May of this year. Sales taxes lag approximately 2 months behind when the sales tax is collected. So what you see typically in revenues is that in the general fund, until we get towards the end of the year, you're going to lag a little bit behind what your budgeted projection is. Here's some of the detail on the general fund revenues. I already mentioned property tax and sales tax. The CDBG revenue is related to CDBG expenditures. It's a reimbursable grant, so if we incur the cost, then we're going to ask for the revenue. Expenditures in the general fund are right on target. You'll notice here on the detail by department on the general fund expenditures that the city attorney is a bit under budget, and that's due to the fact that while the city attorney was acting or interim city manager, his personnel costs were charged to the administration department rather than to the city attorney department.
That's only one reason. It's a very effective use of money.
Also, the city attorney is very prudent with his budget. Non-department there, as I said before, the year-to-date amount includes encumbrances, and the non-department line includes encumbrances for the fuel contract for the city. So that's encumbered for the whole year, so that's why that percentage year-to-date is a bit high. And planning is running a little bit under budget. I believe that's because you haven't used all of your professional services amount that you budgeted, but I could be wrong. He's good with managing his money. Culture and recreation. This program, the revenues and expenditures are pretty much in line with the budget. And we put a note up there about the other sources. Those are the amounts transferred at month end, or at fiscal year end. And so you're not going to see that number come up to 100% until after we close the books. Expenditures by type in the Culture and Recreation Fund. And then here they are by department in Culture and Recreation Fund. If you look at this, you see aquatics is running a little bit below budget. I suspect that that's due to the fact that it's not a year-round program, that the aquatics, the pool is open only seasonally. So that number by the end of the year will probably come up closer to 100%.
Do you have any information on the SOAR program? That's year-round, isn't it?
SOAR running below, I think that is due to personnel. I don't believe SOAR has SOAR been fully staffed this year, Armando?
It is staffed, once we receive 20 for every 20 students, there's an additional staff member added. So depending on a site, if they're at 35, we wouldn't add another staff member till they reach 40. That number also includes summer SOAR, which we will be moving to Fairside School this year. So everything seems to be okay at this point.
It sounds like maybe the enrollment is down a little bit, and that's why we don't need more.
In some locations, Lake Canyon, it's down from last year, but River Oaks, we actually had to put a cap on it. We had so many kids involved in our program.
So it just depends on the area.
Yes.
So basically what's happening here is conservative budgeting practices would say, budget for what you believe your maximum staffing level would be, and then if it turns out it's not that, you're going to have this kind of experience where you're under budget. And there's some money in the library line that hasn't been used yet. I believe that's general maintenance stuff. And Measure R is coming in slightly under budget on most all of these categories. Once again, I believe this one is, Measure R revenues are coming off of sales tax. And so you're going to see in the revenue line, you're going to see a bit of a lag there as well in receipt of the revenues. Stormwater. M&O is under. I think we have some unused to-date professional services. The capital outlay, that gets, that's one really prime area where you will not see even monthly things, expenditures occurring. The expenditure's going to occur when the projects are done. And then, that's pretty much. Most of my comments on most of these funds are kind of vanilla, and that's probably a good thing, because you don't want me standing up here and telling you, oh my, this is radically different from what we thought it would be. But overall, everything in here is pretty much the same as what we thought it would be, so it's good news. Probably not that interesting of a presentation, but
In this case, 4M is good.
yeah, I'm typically most comfortable as a finance director if it is boring. If it's not, not a good deal.
Finances, that's good.
So in wastewater, it's pretty much the same thing as what I've been talking about. The M&O is running a little bit under, and capital outlay, we have the big project that's going on there, and that one, again, is not going to be, you know, even increments throughout the year, but that project is ongoing. And solid waste is, you know, M&O slightly under, and capital is dependent on when the projects are done. And then the last three slides, what we put together here are the lighting and landscaping districts, and I just wanted to touch briefly on those. District 32 there is looking pretty good with positive, you know, revenues over expenses. Let me go back. 33 is starting to show a little bit of a negative fund balance. At this point, I'm not that concerned about it. Typically, what happens if you have a fund with a negative fund balance is that you look at that and you say, okay, is this something that's going to continue every year, or do we know what's causing this and can we do something to correct it? So for Fund 33 and 37, we see small negative ending fund balances projected. However, and this is part of the conversation that we'll have when we go into our budget conversations, there's some things that we can do about that, and because there are things that can be done about it, at this point, I'm not that worried about it. If I was standing here 2 or 3 years down the road and this is still negative, then I would be worried. But at this point, I think we're operating fairly efficiently, and I know that we plan to have more conversations about it next week. So that said, do we have any questions?
Council, any questions?
No.
Excellent, thank you, okay.
Thank you.
Meeting of the city clerk's report. Beautification committee.
We have a beautification committee appointment. It's an appointment to be made by Council Member Powers. I had one letter submitted or application submitted from Stephen Justice, and he's interested in being appointed by you.
He's not here today.
No, he's not. I called him.
You know, I felt bad because I hadn't called him up and spoken to him because I was on vacation, but
lo and behold, I really do know who he is. And he's a young, man with, his, children were on my grandchildren's baseball team, blah, blah, blah. And I'm glad to see that he's taken an interest in working on one of the committees for the city of Galt, so I heartily approve it.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, moving on to comments by staff. And wait, anything? Lakewood.
No, thank you, but I was looking forward to hearing the agenda's comments.
I tried to scoot past that one.
Really?
Amy, anything to add? Great. Paula? Armando?
The Galt Market will be hosting the Regional State Bus Rodeo this weekend. So Saturday, the bus drivers from Northern California will be competing to move ahead to the state competition, which will be held here Memorial Weekend at the Galt Market grounds also. So.
Thank you. Chief Stockton.
It's okay, Stockman, I answered that too. I'm just proud to announce that we made a sergeant promotion of Richard Small. Went into effect yesterday. So he's very excited, and his family's very excited, and he's getting a lot of support from the police department. Second is that the Every 15-Minute program was a tremendous success, very impactful, and I couldn't be prouder of staff, and with their support from CHP and the fire department, the teachers, 24 students, and the 4 folks that volunteered to be part of the scenario itself. Very, very impactful. They also held a real court hearing for an actual DUI person in front of the students, and he agreed to have his case heard in front of the students, and again, very impactful for the high school students there at Galt High.
Is that new?
It's part of the program. I don't know if it's new for Galt.
I don't recall it in the past, but that's very awesome to hear.
Yeah, an actual DUI case being heard. It was very impactful. So.
Yeah, Mayor, staff's been very busy working on budget, and I know Emily's staff and Emily's been kind of diving into the numbers, and we've been getting a lot of information to her. We have our kind of pre-budget meeting scheduled for Monday, I believe at 2 o'clock here. So just be prepared to listen to more budget. Thank you.
And the strategic plan, correct?
That's Thursday.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Thursday, strategic plan.
Mr. Rudolph? Okay, we'll start down here. Councilmember Campbell?
Nothing.
Councilmember Towers?
Nothing.
Okay. Councilmember Hewitt?
I just want to make sure that the public knows that the dedication of the garden has been scheduled. What date is it, Donna? May 28th? 26th. May 26th at noon at the garden.
Thank you, that's exciting to do that.
The other thing is the art show on Friday. I know that Councilmember Powers went, and Barbara was there, and they did a wonderful job, so Barbara should be very proud of them. They did a great job, so I know the city manager was also there. So really enjoyed that. That was a really wonderful event. I think that's the kind of events that are really good for the students and the community.
Question?
Well, I was going to comment also on the garden visit. The students did a very good job. Michael Pritchard was amazing. You were either laughing or crying with him. And I was impressed with the diversity of the crowd that was there. There were seniors, there were all ages, and they all seemed to enjoy it. And one of the things that I heard people come away with, especially the adults, is they had forgotten what they were like as teenagers, how passionate and how emotional they were. So they were a little bit more understanding of themselves. And then the very next day, we all went over to the library for the Day of the Child. And that was successful as well. We gave away 3 books to, very low attendance. So I think we're ready for a little rest.
All right. If nothing else, actually return this to the meeting, and council will be moving to closed session.